Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com.
I've got one that I'd like to read the headline of for you, and I'd like to see your reactions because I think it's a wonderful, slightly insane headline. This comes from PC Gamer, and it was published yesterday, and it reads thus. Japanese game producer argues that thick thighs on anime girls are a natural byproduct of economic recession.
Big thighs are good for morale.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's trying to say.
Just left. Yeah.
Thick is such a loaded word.
Would you like to know more? I will read on. So, yeah. Atelier, I think it's pronounced. A Japanese RPG series is, as you might expect, filled with conventionally attractive anime people. I like the way this article is written, so I'm probably going to quote it verbatim if I'm sure the author doesn't mind. It's Harvey Randall. So thank you, Harvey, for writing such an amusing article. An upcoming entrant in the series, Atelier Yumiya, the alchemist of memories and the envisioned land, is no exception, and it has big shoes to fill. The game's past protagonist, Riza, made waves amongst its fan base due to having body fat on her legs. How daring, says the article. Speaking about these incredible past achievements in anime girl technology, brackets, my tongue is wedged in my cheek. Producer Yunzo Hosoi tells 4Gamer, translated via Automaton, that Riza took off with her fans because of the economy. No, really. This is just my perception, he says, but I think that the economy has an influence on what kind of designs become popular. There are certain types of characters that are needed in times of recession, and there are types of characters... Oh, sorry, my phone's just decided to jump away from where I was reading. Bear with. Go away. Bear with. There are certain types of characters that are embraced only when the economy is booming. He then goes on to note that trends like a plump figure are more common during a recession. Do you like larger women when you're poor, Matt?
But I like all women. My level of
I feel like we should get
little bearing on
a
it.
chart going here.
That's the thing.
Size of women compared to income going up and down. Just like, what's going on here? It's very strange. But
that's the thing that 99% of men, I believe, is true, is that even with all the hatred and anger and contempt that men can feel for women, there isn't maybe... There's 1% of women that these men would, if offered, would not sleep with. There is no more. So that's the what's the word? Hypocrisy and madness of it all is. So obviously this is a very strange take on it, but the truth is that people who are attracted to women are just attracted to women. That's just the nature of things. So the economy has nothing to do with it.
The article goes on to mention some research that they looked into after hearing these quotes. And they said that they did some Googling and found that some studies have found that hungrier men prefer more filled out, mature figures. So I don't know what research that was. And that also it was a drum banged by the fashion industry circa 2005. So yeah, not sure on those two. But what are your thoughts, Jem? Oh, go on, Matt. No.
I just...
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say,
Oh,
I looked at, I found the article and the woman's face looks.
Yeah.
See if I can
I
screen.
don't think it looks especially large to me.
So my main thing is. Now, how old
Quite
would
young,
you say she looks?
I would say probably. Yeah. Early 20s, maybe teens.
She looks like 12 to me.
Teens, probably. Maybe even younger.
I'd say super young. So,
no
pictures of the thighs for some reason. But nevertheless, it's 2,000 or 3,000 takedowns on works, inappropriate fan art. Jesus Christ. That one actually looks quite cool. Anyway, so the thick thighs hurt no one. It's one of those things where
it's just an interesting conclusion to gather.
It's the faces in anime.
It's a byproduct of economic recession. Yeah. I'm not sure, to be honest. But, yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a link between fashions and wealth and what we view as being an example of wealth. So in recent years, it's been all about being slim has been a sign of wealth. So you're healthy, but you're slim. But in times gone by, a sign of wealth was to be heavier, because that was a good example of how you had so much food you could gain weight. So it's not completely insane, but it is probably 90%. It's just it's clearly ridiculous, because as none of those images were large people, we're just talking about curvaceous girls, and we know that curvaceous girls is a popular thing within the anime side of things. It's like they're either curvaceous women or they're androgynous children, and they're equally sexualized. So I think it's just trying to use facts to justify preference.
It's always funny when someone shows their hand sort of reveals their hand because everyone has their proclivities. But so you can keep them to yourself. We know if you make characters with massive thick thighs that are twice the size of their heads, you can infer that person likes thick thighs, and that's fine. But then when someone comes out with going, it's not because of me and my proclivities. It's because of the market. It's the market that demands. It's the free market of ideas that has demanded this from me. So it's just, and it said translated by automaton. I assume that means
that as well,
AI translated.
Yeah. So who knows how accurate that article is?
It's very hard to imagine what else he could possibly mean.
Okay. Do you have any other news stories you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. I have an article about some research that has been carried out by an organization called Media Research, and that stands for Make Informed.
Idiot assholes.
They've been looking at why gamers play games, and I think that's something that we're often discussing. So they found, is probably no surprise to us, but I thought I'd just share some of these statistics with you so that we can maybe discuss them a little bit. So they found that the vast majority of people, 53%, said that they play for relaxation and escapism. And I think it's important to say that they just asked them, why do you game? So people give interesting answers. And I found this article looking at the gaming news on Reddit earlier today. And it was quite interesting looking at the comments in response to this news article. And a lot of people were saying that they didn't game for escapism. They just gamed because it's fun and it's a way to chill out and the world outside the door. So I think there could be an argument that not everyone understands what's meant by escapism. But anyway, 53% of people said that they game for relaxation and escapism. And I'm just looking at my notes, 14% said no, sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, 47% were then fragmented across a whole bunch of other distinct motivations. So I'll just give you a little bit of information on those different areas. So they had the escapist, which was 53% of gamers. We've talked about them already. They were saying that they spend most of their time and they play about 8.3 hours weekly, which I don't know how that fits in with the figures we were looking at in our Gamer Guild
around
section,
about the average, wasn't it?
But
yeah.
it feels. And then you had challengers, and they made up 14% of gamers, and they like testing their skills and getting their brain ticking. They like to be getting rewards, and they also go out for the recognition. And they spend about 9 hours a week, and they also like social media more than other gamers, apparently. So then we have the builders, and they make up 10% of gamers. Now, I have to say that I've just recently started playing Valheim, and it's the first game that Daniel and I have played together for years that we are completely loving and addicted to at the moment. And that's all about building. It's a survival game, so there's quite a lot of dying, mostly dying, but it is also about building. Builders play games to satisfy their creativity, and they get motivation similar to the other sections they get. They're like an all-rounder. So, and that's one of the things that I think is great about Valheim, is that you can go and fight things, or you can build a house, or you can fish, you can hunt. Then you've got the competitors. That makes up 10% of gamers. They obviously like to fight with the other players. They like everything to be skill-based, and they spend almost 10 hours a week gaming. And then you have the socialites, which makes up 8% of gamers, and they are the most socially active gamers, surprisingly enough. And they spend a lot of time hanging out with people in non-digital environments, as well as a non-digital entertainment, as well as gaming entertainment. So they have a sort of work hard, play hard attitude to gaming. So they're spending time socially out at the pub, and then they go home and spend another 8 hours gaming overnight, by the sounds of it. It's just a really interesting sort of set of statistics. They go on into all sorts of detail. There's just a whole thing about the habits of gamers and the age groups and who plays what and who does what. And I just thought it was really interesting for us, given that we were talking recently about who games and why we game and why we feel guilty about it or don't feel guilty about it. So I think it was quite an interesting bit of research. I think it's really good that they're doing research here. They actually have a quote here from a 59-year-old UK-based female. Sadly, not to put anyone down, but sadly, this 59-year-old female is talking about playing Candy Crush as a way to escape their reality. But I'm pretty sure that there are better games to play to escape your reality than Candy Crush. But I know a huge amount of people do play Candy Crush, and we're not about elitism here. We're about the acknowledgement that all gaming is equal and all gaming is good, except when it's not. So yeah, that was my.
I didn't think Candy
Second
Crush was still a
news
thing, is
piece.
it?
I'm always...
Has it had its time,
Sorry?
Oh, yeah.
Candy Crush? Or,
No, it's a
or is
fucking
it still
cash
going?
cow.
Oh,
There's one of those things where, yeah, it's wild. And they have a billion knockoff versions of it as
Yeah.
well. So that's been around
Fair
for a
enough.
long time now. I'm always very skeptical of these kinds of articles and studies because you need to go. It sounds so much like they were given a multiple choice, like, quiz to do. You go, what type of gaming most describes you? Tick 2 boxes at most, and you just you need to know what the sample size is. You go, we've spoken to 5 people, and that's where they get this the
Yeah.
dentist thing. 3 in 10
Yeah.
dentists agree, and those 3 are the ones that work here. So
You can go and look at the original research, but it's behind not a paywall, but behind a registration wall. And I was tempted to go and look at it because I do love a bit of research. And I would hope that in that information, they would go into a bit more detail about who their sample size was and how big it was. They've got quotes here from people all over the world, though. So they have definitely gone out to multiple people. But yes, I suspect from the information that we've got here, that's exactly what they did. They just said, which of these categories would you say you fell into? And as you say, Matt, that's not nuanced enough to really get a lot of information because we enjoy different things at different times, I think. And some of us might be social gamers with our friends and hardcore.
It feels like it was, like, the tone of it sounds like it was done by people who aren't gamers.
I know what you mean. Yeah. It's as if they're looking into the gaming world and saying, these are all the different types of games.
Why do people game?
As if it's almost like a David Attenborough documentary or something. Here we have the escapists.
Actually, a group that I follow called Viva la Dirt League, who I think I've mentioned before, a very long time ago, did a scene where they had a bunch of they were young men, but they were like geeky men trying to get with the girls at the nightclub, and it was all done as a David Attenborough scene.
It's good.
Yeah.
But no, so
And I think they're...
I was just going
Go
to
ahead.
say, it is interesting to read about, even if it is probably not actually based on anything substantial. It's just interesting to see it, that it's been given the green light and that people are interested in gaming, even if they're not necessarily proper gamers themselves, because it shows how much of an impact gaming is having on us as a society as well.
Yeah. It's usually marketing agencies that do these kind of research projects because they're looking at ways to encourage clients to their gaming through them, or to which audiences do we want to advertise around and things like that, because obviously it's quite useful if you know that 54% of gamers are escapists, then you might market different products around gaming articles and things like that. So I think it's usually from those perspectives, and it would be nice, as you say, both of you, that to see some of this research done by people who actually understand gaming and are actually looking into it.
So it just feels like
PhD.
It feels like they're looking in the wrong direction, because even if they talk to 5,000 people, and that's a decent sample size, but the best sample sizes are the statistics and the sales and the current player counts, because you could talk to 5,000 people and not speak to any one of the 1 million people that are playing Counter-Strike 2 at the moment. And people playing Dota and Monster Hunter and PUBG Battlegrounds and stuff like Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft. These are all things that, even though I've been gaming for pretty much my entire life, are absolutely alien to me. Those are the places that I'd be more interested to find out the reasonings behind, because I'd like them to speak to Counter-Strike, Dota, all these people, go and speak to a large number of them and find out why they play this particular game. Because they play these kinds of games in a way that I've never played any kind of game. And that's where the mysteries are. To me, that's what I'd be interested in.
It's a thought-provoking point, Matt. Yeah, I'd not thought about it from that perspective, but makes a lot of sense. Definitely. Yeah.
Capital, and I don't, and it baffles me how successful these things are.
Indeed. Okay, so just thinking in terms of time, do you think we should wrap up? Or have we got any more stories?
Can I do one more?
Yeah, go for it, Matt.
Yeah, I've got one. They're both quite depressing, but I'll go with the less depressing one, which is saying something. I'll describe to you what it is. For the last 7 years, 8 years, it turns out there was a Wonder Woman game in production.
Oh.
And it was made by Monolith Studios. Monolith Studios, the developers that made Shadow of Mordor.
I was trying to think where I'd heard it before, because I know that I played one of their games, or two of them actually, which was a Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor. Yeah. That's really sad.
And they're the ones which...
But obviously, they're not going to make it, are they? Or are they? Oh,
So, Shadow of War came out in 2017. Didn't realise it had been that long. And clearly they've been working on this Wonder Woman game. Not only has the game been cancelled, the Warner Bros. Games made a statement saying, "We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios: Player First Games, Warner Brothers Games Design San Diego, and Monolith Productions."
That is sad.
Not only are they cancelling what could have been an excellent game, that they have obviously been doing the same thing that they tried with Suicide Squad and Dragon Age Veilguard, going, we want our next live to turn these single-player action experiences into multiplayer looter shooters. And they're going, okay, yeah, we're going to stop this. And because Warner Brothers owns the Nemesis system, we're not going to see it in anything else ever.
So frustrating.
And
that is sad.
Yeah, it's fucked. And there's another, all this bullshit corporate speak of a tough decision. Recognise their storied history. Admire the passion of the teams. We remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans. Developed by our world-class studios and getting our games business back to profitability and growth.
Yeah. That is depressing. Sorry. It's a sign of something that has been trending across the industry for quite a while now, is so many studios having to make cuts and closing down because they're not making enough money, even if they perform relatively well. If they don't hit a certain amount for the company stakeholders and such, it's considered a waste of resources and a waste of money. And there are cuts that are happening all over, everywhere. And it's not confined to one country either, it's worldwide. So it's a sad trend which is happening, and you wonder if it's going to, like we touched on earlier in the episode, whether it will mark a change in gaming habits. Are we going to vote with our fingers and play games that are perhaps developed by more independent developers because they probably need the support and aren't going to get cut by large overbearing companies who amalgamate everything. But yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think that in the past it made sense you'd be an indie studio and then you'd want to be acquired by a massive corporation, because then you'd get all the support structures that they have and can allow you to make more games. But now that the people and the executives in these companies have pivoted entirely away from thinking about how do we develop games. It's how do we maximize the profit. And that's their only focus now. So being acquired by a massive corporation is something that I guarantee most indie studios will never take a chance on.
Definitely something to dread, yeah.
Ever again, because they take your property and then they can cut you when their decisions leads to terrible games like Suicide Squad that cost them $200 million. And that's the executive's fault from saying, no, we want you to make a live service game because we want that Fortnite money, the skin money, the loot box money. And so they massively hamstring the developers. Then it's inevitably a terrible product. And then they shut down the studio. That's the life cycle of AAA games at the moment.
It seems a bit strange, doesn't it, that at a time when games are becoming more and more popular and more accessible and accessed, that the industry is struggling, as you say, Alex, internationally. I think that probably one of the answers to that is that, as we said a few episodes ago, 19,000 games were released on Steam last year. And so obviously it's a very saturated market. And given that games are so expensive, people may not be buying more than 2 or 3 of the big games a year.
Yeah.
And maybe there just isn't enough money to go around. But I still find that hard to believe. So I'm very much inclined to agree with you, Matt, that this is more about how much money can we pocket rather than it is impossible for us to continue to run this industry or this company. I will say, however, that when I was working at EA very briefly back in the dinosaur era, they were at that point going around and acquiring small studios and small groups and small businesses, and they were known for their ruthlessness. They were known that if EA acquired you, you would probably be stripped, and all of the staff would either be made redundant or they would be absorbed into the company in some way, shape and form. And they were very challenging in that respect. So I don't think it's a new thing. I think that companies have been doing this for a long time, but I think it is perhaps more cutthroat now.
I wonder how much it's been impacted by the surge in popularity that gaming has had during the pandemic. And now that it's over, it's not over, but now that the lockdowns are over, everyone's, where's the money? The money's gone because less people are gaming now. They don't have the same amount of time. And I wonder if it's a reflection of that it just feels much more heightened for the people looking for profits because they're comparing it to COVID times. I don't know.
There is, I can end on a positive aspect on it, is that thank God for Epic Games because of the Unreal Engine. Because until the Unreal Engine hit Unreal Engine 4, I think, that was when it really stepped up a gear in terms of becoming the highest possible quality game engine. And they made it free for anyone to use. So that's why the vast majority of independent games are made on the Unreal Engine, because it's a AAA quality game development tool that literally anyone can use. So as long as you've got a bit of money to buy some assets from their incredible online store, then they can make it look as good as any other game. And then so there's going to be, it's not like an indie game has to make their own engine and it looks all crap. Indie games are keeping these big developers on their toes, and there is a good trend of new games being released at £50, like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and all of the PlayStation re-releases on PC. So it's an interesting thing happening with the way that games are spending their money at the moment. And it seems good.
We'll keep our fingers crossed that this is a trend that will grow from the ashes. But yes, thank you both for sharing your stories of news for March. It's been a very eventful month, and I hope that everyone's enjoyed listening and watching. We'll catch a new episode from us every Thursday, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.